So my sister Jamie just had her first baby, and I got to meet this baby when it was 7 days old. That's right, that's a week. That's fresh. That's almost as fresh as you can meet a baby. That's still under warranty. And it's exciting when your sibling has their first baby because this is a huge shift in the familial dynamics. Your parents become grandparents. You become an uncle. You begin to question if you've done anything meaningful in life. But I showed up with a different and a very specific goal in mind, because I wanted to do something with my new nephew called skin to skin. Skin to skin is when you take your shirt off and you put that little baby, who's also shirtless, on your skin. This is something that's recommended by doctors, though it's typically done with newborns. It's supposed to support infant development, promotes bonding, and change your entire perspective on life. I had a friend who did this with his newborn, and he said it was like the universe shifted around him. It rewired his brain like a little crying ayahuasca trip. And that sounded pretty cool. I've always been worried that I'm incapable of love, that normal worry that people have. And if there's a magic way to automatically love my nephew, then I wanted to try that. So my first impression of Jude, that's the baby's name, Jude, was that he was very cute. Then my grandma came in and she took him and was like, "Sometimes babies look like cranky old men, but not our Jude. He's like a little Jesus." That's nice, isn't it? I assume she means baby Jesus and not the starved rib model up on the cross Jesus. But I hear people comparing babies to baby Jesus quite a bit. And I found myself wondering, do other cultures do that? Like, do Muslims hold the baby and be like, "Oh, he looks just like the little Muhammad, probably because we've never seen him and we can't ever see him or make a picture of him. But if we could, he'd look exactly like this baby, I bet." Because that would be nice if they did. It was nice to meet my nephew, but the real goal, as I said, was skin to skin. And my sister, she says, yeah, that's all right. But she tells me I have to wait, because apparently a baby's life is super busy. You need to wait for the slim window where they're not feeding, sleeping, or pooping. And personally, I have a ton of times where I'm not doing those things, but a baby, not so much. Instead, I get to hold Jude normally, like with clothes on, which gets boring super fast. Because there's really only two things you can do when you're holding a baby. You can stare at them, or you can play a game that I like to call, "How much can I bother this baby before he wakes up?" So I'm touching Jude's head a lot. And I have this realization as I'm doing it. Things are often compared to babies' bottoms, but I think we could also be saying this is as soft as a baby's scalp. Because baby scalp, that might be the softest thing on earth. Forget about baby seals. I want a baby scalp blanket. Synthetic, obviously, because I'm not a monster. But whoever figures out how to crack the synthetic baby scalp market, they're going to start an empire. I was delighted to discover that Jude has another skill that was pretty unexpected. He's 7 days old and he already farts like a grown man. And this is consistently funny. But what's wild is that I've never heard this in any of the parenting pitches, and it's a huge selling point. Because I'm not talking like a little toot. This isn't one of those grandma farted as she got up and we're all going to pretend it didn't happen. I'm talking like there's a New York trucker hiding somewhere in this apartment blasting ass. It is wild. Is this another one of those things that is consistent across cultures? Are Mongolians sitting with their babies and killing themselves laughing when it farts? Oh, it's like there's a yak in its butt. Because if so, I think that'd be really nice. The other thing I was curious about with this baby was his eyes. Specifically, I wanted to see if I could find any trace of a soul in there. This is going to sound a bit crazy, but I'd recently read a memoir from a comedian, and he was talking about how wild it was when his daughter was born. He's into the spiritual stuff, and he describes looking into her eyes and seeing pure consciousness without any trace of an ego. Like, all you're seeing is pure acceptance and love. And in fact, some people say that this is the spiritual benchmark that we should all be striving for, that babies are basically little Buddhas, which may explain why the classic statue of Buddha looks exactly like a baby. I thought it was cool that I got a chance to test this out with my own fresh little nephew. So I'm standing there, I'm holding him, and I'm staring into his eyes a lot. And sure enough, I see no trace of ego or identity. This kid, he has no idea what's going on. He's obsessed with the ceiling fan, but I'm skeptical that this is the path to enlightenment. But also, his eyes aren't empty. They do seem to be full of a mixture of curiosity, openness, and I don't know if I'd call it love, but there's no doubt that he accepts me completely without judgment. which maybe this is the definition of love. But then he'd rip this huge trucker fart and boom, the moment, gone. Finally, the last day comes along, and Jamie suddenly announces it's the perfect window to skin. I don't even think about it. I whip my shirt off, I grab Jude, who's only in a diaper, I press him to my chest, and I wait for my life to be changed. And then, as I'm pressing this thing that had been pulled from my sister's body last week against my shirtless chest, I realize that this actually may be a little bit weird. To make it even worse, Jude starts squirming. I didn't even know he had knees and elbows until exactly this moment. I don't think he even knew he had knees and elbows until this moment. So he's strongly trying to unskin to skin himself, and Jamie suggests that I lay down on the couch. I do, and she airdrops Jude down onto my chest. So Jude, he's all head right now, and he does not like this. He immediately starts flopping this massive noggin and trying to flip himself over like he's an upside-down beetle. He's doing some impressive undulating, actually. And then he reaches out and he grabs a fistful of my hair with that freakish baby strength, and he starts yanking himself around, which is when my sister tenderly points out that this is his first chest hair that he's experiencing, because my brother-in-law doesn't have any. So I'm glad I'll always have that to bond over with Jude as he grows up. Jude has flung himself over. He's about to escape. I'm very narrow. There's not much room to escape from. But luckily, I'm way bigger than him. So, I just kind of push him back into the middle of me and I clamp him in place. I'm awaiting the surge of endorphins or love or magic or whatever. And after a bit, I'm forced to admit that this might not be working. Jamie plucks him off. I think Jude and I are both relieved. Maybe I was just too late on skin to skin, and you need to get that baby while it's super fresh. Maybe there's like a 30 minutes or under kind of deal, like he's a pizza. Maybe we just don't share enough DNA. Or maybe over our days together, I'd already reached that place that skin to skin is supposed to take you to. That place of pure acceptance and love, which I suspect might be the case.